I mean, do you think it's safe for rappers to be rapping again? Like, it feels like for a while it was like you got to rap and sing and rap this, like, yeah.
That's where we got to. It's all about balance.
Yeah.
I mean, some dudes can rap and sing. Some dudes should just rap. Some dudes should do some other play guitar. Once we start
mix and matching.
Yeah, once we start same thing. It's just same. Some shit just stay for Friday. Don't put that over there with that. Don't mean it can't have his own lane, his own day.
Right. And you have your own shine.
Yeah,
right.
All of it. I mean, rap is for rapping. Start doing a bunch of everything else. It's getting away from the elements and
it just
diminishing the culture.
It got just so homogenized, bro. It was like you had to be able to, no matter where you were from, it feels like you had to sound like every sort of region.
Like
the Kendrick go, it was like, yo, this is super West Coast.
Yeah,
and we're gonna West Coast.
Kept it over there.
Yeah.
And we don't need to hit 53 more. Now they not like us.
Right.
Just because that got them 5 Grammys and Super Bowl, this, that. When you go to create, don't try to make.
So that audio that you just heard was Jadakiss on the Carmelo Anthony's 7 p.m. in Brooklyn podcast. A very good listen if you want to take the time out and go check that out. But it's always exciting to me when they're talking about hip-hop and the current state of hip-hop, which he so eloquently elaborated on. Now, when he talked about the duplication of Kendrick Lamar and of his recent success and how labels try to emulate that, that's not a new thing. Now, initially, when I thought about his statements and him blaming the artist for the duplication or the artist's success for the duplication, I started thinking about, maybe it's more the label's fault, because you have to think about from a historical standpoint of what the labels try to do. So the label's job is to make money and to make success. Well, their first job is to make success, what ultimately will lead to the revenue and the money. So there's a lot of precedence with labels trying to emulate a sound or a particular person culturally. When you think about going all the way back to the Tupac and Biggie days. So, and more recently, 50 Cent, and then of course, Kendrick Lamar, as Jadakiss alluded to or stated. When you think about back when Notorious B.I.G. was out, who did, Puffy go after Biggie's demise? He went after Sean, an artist who didn't look the same, but sounded similar. He had the same voice as Biggie pretty much. And they were trying to emulate that sound, thinking they can replicate it, but he didn't have the look, he didn't have the swag, he didn't have quite the same pizzazz as Biggie. And plus, also, he was from like Belize, so he wasn't, an American star. So it was a little bit different, even though you couldn't tell from his lyrics, from the way he sounded. And now when you think about Tupac, it's a lot of people, a lot of artists or labels try to duplicate a Tupac, whether it be a Ja Rule, or some will say to a degree of 50 Cent in that matter, trying to create this artist that was real and had been from the streets and rapped about so many different things, but you can't really duplicate a Tupac because most of those artists that have that hard shell don't have the soft heart that Tupac had and was able to rap about things that were not societal issues such as war and poverty and things like that. You don't really have those type of artists being able to diversify themselves. So that's why the labels kind of went wrong at. And then even when you think about 50 Cent, when he came out, the story was he got shot 9 times and lived. And then after that, they, rolled out The Game, who had got shot 5 times and lived, and who also had this gangster image and this gangster reputation. So it's not new of what Jadakiss was talking about. They're trying to make 53 Not Like Us's. I haven't heard many songs like Not Like Us, before or after. So it's very difficult to duplicate. And then you have to create the context behind it, which was the beef with Drake. But, for the most part, every industry tries to duplicate a success. So in sports terms, when you think about the NFL, the last Super Bowl champion, they're going to try to emulate that same formula, whether it's be running the football and having a quarterback that can run, or they try to, with the Chiefs, when the Tampa Bay did the cover 2 and, dominated in the Super Bowl, what did every team do that following year? They went into cover 2, stopped the big plays, and that was the formula. So they always do it. And when you think about Raiola, the quarterback that's in Nebraska, now he's trying to emulate or imitate Patrick Mahomes down to a T. He has the hair. He does the pregame celebrations. Even his mannerisms and things like that is totally like Patrick Mahomes, or when you say Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan. So it's going to be in every industry where they're going to try to duplicate things. It's just the nature of the business. When you see something successful, you think the audience wants that, but people fail to realize when you try to duplicate something, you have to duplicate it to a T. You can't leave out little details, like the Tupac one, when, you try to find a gangster rapper, that has that image, but he also has to be able to have that same subject matter as that artist as well, or it's not going to totally work out. In some instances it can, but for the most part it won't. And, Jadakiss comes from the era of the 1990s rap where everything was fresh, everything was new. They were still sampling music back then, but the sounds were different. You had Lauryn Hill, who was rapping and singing, who her album was classified as pop, but, she had elements of hip hop as well. And then you had, Jadakiss with the raspy voice. You had the DMX with the dog barking, and he also had a raspy voice as well. You had a Big Pun who, rapped all of these different metaphors and all these flows that were just crazy to hear at the time. You had so many different sounds. You had Jay-Z, who was a laid-back rapper. You just had a lot of different sounds. Now it's more emo rap. It's a lot of emotional singing. It's a lot of different. It's pretty much the same around the board. You don't have too many artists that have that different sound. Like I covered Future last week. Future has a different sound than most people, and a lot of people emulate it. So now his sounds mimicked. But he did create a new sound. You had a Kid Cudi, who a lot of people emulated his sound as well. So every now and then, like maybe every 5 or 10 years, we get somebody with a new sound, but it gets emulated so much, the originator gets drained out. And I think that's something that Jadakiss didn't really consider in totality from a contextual standpoint. And he also addressed that issue of rapping is for rapping, and he said doing a bunch of everything else is getting away from the elements of hip hop, which I talk about all the time. The true MC, it's not pop. It wasn't designed for pop, I should say. But hip hop does have the element to, be yourself. And when you think about a Drake has a lot of issues with this, especially when Mos Def addressed this on the podcast. He talked about Drake being pop because he does have a lot of, elements in his music that are not pure hip hop. Like the singing part was never incorporated into the elements of hip hop. So even Lauryn Hill's Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, that album, if you look on Apple Music, is classified as pop, even though it's a lot of elements of R&B, it's a lot of elements of hip hop, but it's classified as pop because of the sound, because of the singing incorporated into it. When you, like, if you had, for example, Lil Nas X, when he had that country album, they didn't label it, they labeled it as pop more likely than country because, I don't even know, because he had all elements, he had the sounds, he had the country diction, but I think it was just the subject matter of what he was rapping about. They classified it as pop, and it's easy to do that. If you miss one word here, miss one word there, they can easily classify you and make an excuse to classify you out of your genre that you were intended to be. So it's very difficult when you talk about hip hop and what it's supposed to be, because some people think Jadakiss is just an old head and he's just talking, but he comes from New York, the mecca of hip hop, and his whole life was geared around hip hop and what hip hop is, and just the pure lyricism that he has. I'll be able to cover him on Inside the Scope eventually. He's one of my favorite rappers out of New York, and one of my favorite rappers. He's probably in my top 20. Just his subject matter and the way he paints a picture of things, even if you're not from that world, you can understand it. But, the conflict comes in about being yourself and just finding that sound. They also talked about Ray Charles. Ray Charles, you know, did a lot of covers and things, but he was able to find his sound later in his career. So, you know, tell me, what are your thoughts about Jadakiss's comments, and what do you think hip hop is, and we'll take it from there. So until next time, I'll see you next time.